Can you do that? Or are you obliged to drive him to St. Matthew's Cathedral and say, there's a priest in there who will be happy to counsel you, you know. I don't want to go to St. Matthew's Cathedral. Oh, but you need to go to St. Matthew's. Let me drive you there. Can you do that? No. So you think you have to drive him to his destination. All right, can you do that? Well, you might say that, yeah, I can drive him to the address. I'm not involved in his evil action. But if you do, so you have one kind of reason that would allow you to drive him to the neighborhood. Another, you'd need an even better reason to drive him to the right address. Now suppose he's in a wheelchair. Okay, so he wants you to get him out and put him in the wheelchair. Okay, so that's you're closer now. Now he wants you to go up the ramp and into the third floor. Help him out, you see. You see what I'm saying? The more causally close you are for putting him in the very proximity of the evil act, the stronger the reason you need to do it. You see, I think that driving somebody in the general neighborhood of a drug market is one thing. Driving him to the pusher's very business location is another. Getting him out of the cab and into the office of the drug dealer is still another. You see, the further you get, the stronger the reasons you need to cooperate with this. Okay, so causal proximity, I think, is important. And next, the danger of scandal, leading others into doing evil by your bad example or by compromising the clarity of your own moral life, your own moral convictions, leading people to think you don't believe what you believe is another factor that has to be taken into account. And the greater the occasion of scandal, the greater the likelihood of scandal, the more serious reasons you need to do this. All right. Now, Alphonsus Liguori, I think, taught this and developed the idea of the difference between material and formal cooperation. I mean, we've seen that formal cooperation really involves concurrence in the bad end of the person who's doing the principal bad act. But material cooperation can be justified according to Alphonsus Liguori. His take on it is this. Material cooperation is licit, one, when the action is good or licit in itself, and secondly, one has a reason that is just and proportion to the gravity of the sin, on the one hand, and also proportion to the closeness of the assistance that is given to the carrying out of the sin. So in other words, the graver the evil, the stronger the reason you need to cooperate with it, and also the closer the physical cooperation, the more physically close you are to the causal links that directly result in the action, the stronger the reason you need to cooperate. What are some of the reasons that might justify cooperation? Well, Germain Grisey suggests a couple of reasons that are important. One is fidelity to your own vocational responsibilities or to your job. Let's say you're the cab driver. Your job is to drive people around the District of Columbia. All right. That is a kind of mission. It's not saving souls, it's not feeding the hungry, but it's still useful and still very helpful. It's a good thing to do. This, by the way, is what you are qualified to do. And this is what you are able to accomplish. You're not a PhD in physics. No one's going to hire you as professor of comparative literature. No medical staff has clamored for your services. So you are a cab driver. That's what you know. Okay, you have a wife and you have 5 children. You have serious vocational responsibilities to them. You can't afford to lose your job. And this isn't just craven desire for success or money or luxury. This is your job, your vocation in the Lord. You've been given a responsibility for your family, and this is the best way you meet that responsibility. That is a serious reason to cooperate. Another serious reason, so fidelity to your own vocation, your own active responsibilities can justify cooperation sometimes. The other situation that might really justify it would be duress, okay? There you are sitting in front of the Fifth National Bank doing no harm to anyone at all when there's a loud explosion from the middle of the bank. 3 gentlemen exit carrying large bags stuffed with money. They look at you. They're struck by your wisdom, sense, and good grace, so they immediately make a beeline to your car. One of them puts a gun at the back of your head and suggests that you might want to consider driving away at a rapid rate. If you don't, he will blow your brains out. Are you cooperating with evil? Well, you're facilitating an escape, right? You're helping someone commit a crime and get away with it. Certainly it's cooperation. I would even say that it's immediate cooperation, wouldn't you say? I mean, because the escape is essential to the robbery. If they were just to go out of the bank holding the large sacks of money, strolling down the highway then, maybe stopping in for a cappuccino, congratulating themselves on their good work for the morning, maybe taking out a paper and reading it casually, they would be captured, you know. They need to exit stage left and quickly. Without it, there's no robbery. So you, as the driver of the car, are involved in and are an essential part of their escape, and therefore an essential part of their crime. Is it justifiable for you to drive them away? Or must you say, sirs, I cannot facilitate such a crime. Far be it from me to aid in the general climate of lawlessness that besets our land. No, I am simply going to allow my brains to decorate the windshield of this car and thereby provide employment to the police who will come and clean up the scene, okay? Are you obliged to do this? Common sense would say no. Duress is a good reason to materially cooperate with evil. See? Now, does that mean that you can do anything at all that you need to do in order to survive? And the answer is clearly no. For one thing, there are situations that are more important than your physical life. I mean, your physical life is not the ultimate final good. Even the material well-being in your family is not the final good. God is the final good, right? So when Thomas More was asked to kind of cooperate with the death or with the marriage of Henry VIII, he thought that would be, and he wasn't, he was asked to facilitate in that way the king's marriage to Anne Boleyn. But that involved renouncing the faith that, the church was founded on the rock of Peter. So when Henry declared himself to be married on his own authority, declared himself to be head of the Church of England, Thomas More could have saved his life by at least tacitly acknowledging those things. With a wink and a nod, he probably could have saved his life. But he didn't do it, couldn't do it. Why? Because the faith was at stake, and therefore his salvation. This was true even though his own family suffered gravely as a result of his witness. He lost his station, his house, his job, his honor. No one liked him in the country. I mean, the public opinion in England was largely behind King Henry. So the faith was at stake, and so in that situation, because it was the faith and his soul that was at stake, this immediate material cooperation in the king's wrongdoing, he couldn't do. He couldn't see his way to doing it, and so he died. All right. So there are times when the importance of giving witness trumps the imperative of physical survival. So there are. I think that is the other situation is, of course, that the action that you're asked to cooperate in can never, of course, be intrinsically evil in itself. One of the situations that differentiates Moore's situation from cooperation would be that he was asked to swear to something that he knew or believed to be false, which is a direct crime, a direct sin. It's not cooperating with the evil, it's performing evil. So you have to, when you're involved in a situation that is truly cooperation and not operation, if the action is in itself permissible, I think that you are clearly prohibited from cooperating when it involves a direct denial of the faith, and with in close relation to that, giving scandal against the faith. I think that's one of the factors that rules out material cooperation that might otherwise be justified. And I think also one of the factors that comes into play in judging about the illicitness of material cooperation would be the side effects of your cooperation on other people. What effect is your cooperation going to have on your neighbors and friends? See? Are you giving scandal to them? Are you giving bad example to them? Are you suggesting that the action that you're cooperating with is not such a big deal after all? What effect does your action have on the people who are adversely affected by your action? Is it fair to accept those bad consequences on the lives of other people? For example, if you are cooperating with unjust labor practices, as a grocer, you take fruit from people who underpay their workers. Is that really fair to the workers, you see? Is it fair to accept the negative side consequences of cooperating in a bad action to those people who are directly affected by the action? The more you have alternatives available to you, the more you have some way of avoiding cooperating materially with evil actions, the more obliged you are to see to that. So take, for example, the pizza delivery guy let's see if you can differentiate the different levels of cooperation with a Planned Parenthood clinic. You have the guy who delivers the pizza, who gives lunch to the workers, all right? Then you have a receptionist who makes appointments. You have the cleaning crew, the people who don't do the abortions but mop the floors, Then you have the nurse who helps out with remote physical preparation, doesn't do the abortion but pre-ops the patient maybe. Then you have the nurse that hands the doctors the forceps and all the other stuff that go into that grisly business. Finally, you have the doctor himself, or herself. The doctor's action is clearly ruled out. It's direct killing of an innocent human being. I think when you're dealing with the nurse, who is handing him the forceps, I think that's also immediate material cooperation in an evil act and shares in the intrinsically evil quality of the act. Even though she herself or he himself is not crushing the skull or terminating the life, I think that the fact that it's immediate physical material cooperation, even though she may regret carrying out the action and wish there was some other option, the fact is that her action is actually materially indistinguishable from the abortion itself, makes it a matter of immediate material cooperation, and I think under most accounts that would be ruled out. Then you have the nurse that doesn't do that, but preps the patient, maybe calms down, hands some medicine that would maybe, or sterilizes the patient, in some way that doesn't do the abortion. I think that might be immediate rather than immediate physical material cooperation. But again, the proximity, the directly causal proximity of this action, the fact that this action is linked causally with the other actions that are connected to the abortion, again, I think would rule it out. On the other hand, if you go down further the chain, you're dealing with the cleaning crew. What about them? Well, they need not intend the abortion at all. Planned Parenthood doesn't just do abortions, they do other things. They do examinations of women, for example, that aren't about abortions but are about general health care. And let's just say that's true. Give me that for the sake of argument. You could be helping them out or working there on the cleaning crew, and you need not be directly implicated in any of the abortions. Can you do that? I would say that might be arguable, provided there was absolutely no other job on the face of the earth where you could take care of your family. The greater the duress, that the person is under, the more the action or the cooperation might be excused. You might have, if this was the only job in town and without it your family starves, you might be justified in that more remote material cooperation with abortion by working at a Planned Parenthood clinic. And I think the guy who sends the pizzas is one step further removed, and might find it easier. If think about it as a universal rule, if everybody who delivered pizzas could refuse to deliver pizzas based on their disapproval of the politics or personality or moral actions of the person to whom they're delivering pizza, nobody would ever get a pizza, There's a whole, similarly with the guy who delivers the mail. If mail agents were understood to be free to decline to give you mail they thought was bad for you, there'd be no mail service, you see. It's important that people be able to get their mail regardless, If you subject that to the judgment of the postal workers, there's no mail. The same thing would be true with restaurant service or delivering pizzas. If you're able to refuse to serve people based on their behavior or their actions, again, there'd be no food service delivered to anybody. So I think that those are some of the principles that may help you think about whether material cooperation is justified or not. I think going back to the person who is, you have a very strong reason not to cooperate, especially when the evil gets to be more grave, and especially when your own convictions and your own ability to witness against the evil would be compromised by your cooperation. So you'd have a hard time presenting yourself as a member of a Right to Life committee of a parish if you work at Planned Parenthood, It'd be easy to ridicule you as being, talking out of both sides of your mouth. This is, I think, one of the reasons why the Church takes this question about the HHS mandate so seriously. Because if our own institutions are seen to cooperate with a mandate that provides contraception and sterilization and abortion services, if we pay for that in any direct way or even indirect way, if we are behind it, then there are many in the media or the country who would be happy to seize on evidence like that and say to the whole country, see, these Catholics are hypocrites. They don't really mean what they say. Okay? So the question of scandal remains important. This question of integrity remains important. The question of not undermining your own witness remains important. So that's basically what I wanted to say about the problem of cooperation. It's a difficult question for many reasons. We approach this topic kind of hoping for mathematical clarity, but because the action is not just doesn't just involve evaluating types of action, but also involves prudence. and involves the actual construction of actions. It's harder to find universals, you know, it's hard to find apodictic rules that guide you in every situation. Once you've determined that the action is not intrinsically evil, and it's not immediate material cooperation, discretion and prudence come in here, and there isn't any substitute for it. Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
Well, I have a question, and I know you've probably been asked this many times, but in the issue, for example, of condoms, and in the issue of effort, or where you have a high rate of incidence of disease like AIDS and stuff. Even a sexually transmitted disease can be transmitted between married people. So you have devices and stuff like that to eliminate those, or at least to aid. So that's a question that I know has been asked, and I still wrestle with that.
Yeah.
I still wrestle with that, and I was wondering.
Well, I wrestle. It's difficult. This is why these questions. See, there's a lot at stake. That's another thing that makes the question difficult. It isn't just conceptual difficulties about finding universalities in concrete particulars. It's also difficult emotionally and humanly because the stakes are high. People's lives are at stake, you know, in questions like this. So you have, on the one hand, in Africa, you have the condom thing. What about condoms? Well, is a condom an intrinsically contraceptive device? I think it is. I think so. So can you say it's all right to use them? Well, no, not without saying that contraceptive sex is all right. So you can't. That's why the church can't hand out condoms. Now this makes.
But there's a second use for that, and it's protective. It's prophylactic, not to prevent conception, but
right.
To prevent the transmittal.
Of course.
Of the disease.
That's right. That's right. And that's another purpose, and it's a good purpose. Right. Now the difficulty is, can you focus on that intention without focusing on the contraceptive on the level of intention, you can. I mean, if this action could be decided purely on the basis of intention, your problem would vanish. And in fact, Martin Ronheimer, a Catholic Swiss philosopher, thinks that condom use, in fact, would be permitted for that reason. The intention is directed not to the contraceptive quality of the condom, but on the protective quality of them. It allows you to have intercourse without catching a fatal disease. That's the end aimed at, and since the moral object of the act is identical with what is aimed at, and that would be the theory, you see, if you can really make an action, the moral quality of an action rest on the precise good aimed at, then I think that would work. Can you, though, abstract out the contraceptive dimension to the act? I have a more difficult time with that because the very thing that protects you from the disease is the thing that prevents the act from reaching fertility. You see what I mean? The efficacy of the protection is tied to the efficacy of the contraceptive effect. So the problem is, philosophically, can you aim at one without aiming at the other?
You've got mutual exclusivity, essentially.
By
preventing the transmittal disease, or preventing
the transmission of life.
Right.
So can you aim at one without aiming at the other? And I have difficulty. I mean, I would like to be able to say yes, that you can do this, but I don't see how you can without also accepting the contraceptive effect, you see. All right, so I think that you get into tricky, and we can develop this just a bit. I hate these questions. Wait, let me think out loud for a minute. See, it seems there's a distinction also that you can, there are a couple of other factors that you can think about. One is that something can be wrong, and yet the wrongness can be mitigated by circumstances. So I think that it could be the case that using a condom, and in the question of the transmission of AIDS, the circumstances of emotional pressure and the circumstances of the very real risk to someone's life change significantly the culpability of the person who is engaging in it, particularly when you see that the logic of the teaching on Humanae Vitae isn't crystal clear to people anyway. You get a teaching that isn't clear to people, and you get a teaching which is not clear to people, which is also accompanied, the obedience to which teaching immediately threatens death. It's not surprising that people's brains come to the conclusion that this is crazy, this can't be right. So that would, I think, subjectively anyway, go a long way to mitigating the guilt, you see. Sometimes, and then you do have the factor of weighing what people are actually capable of. If people, what the real correct moral answer to this is, what is the correct? The correct, clear moral answer to this is abstain. See, don't have sex. That is not met with universal enthusiasm. All right? People don't like the answer, and besides, it's not just a matter of not liking it. It's not a trivial thing to ask. It's asking somebody to embrace penitentially without a positive vocation to the act. You know what I mean? The people who have the vocation of celibacy can cope with this according to the normal graces of their state of life. But the normal grace of the state of life of matrimony is intercourse. That's the expression of marriage love, and that's what they're called to, and that's what they're deprived of. Now, so it is against the very nature of the vocation. Now, that doesn't mean, temporary continence is not against the nature of the vocation. But perpetual continence, I won't say it's against the nature of the vocation, because it's a vocation to follow Christ, and to embrace Christ is to embrace his cross. So through extraordinary means, or through extraordinary circumstances, you can be asked by the Lord to embrace the cross of lifetime continence, and I suspect that's what the situation these people find themselves in. However, they probably are not going to follow the teaching, and therefore the pastoral emphasis should be on ready forgiveness and, help people grow in the appreciation of the value of the sacrifice that's demanded. I think that's hard to do, and I think it's heroic virtue, but I don't see that you could go the other road without effectively denying the teaching on Humanae Vitae. Because, after all, it's not just AIDS that presents serious difficulties in obeying the teaching, It isn't just life and death things, it's also income, it's also spacing of children, it's also, all the whole panoply of crosses that come with married life and with kids. And if AIDS would be a proportionate reason to permit what is essentially a contraceptive act, I don't really think that there'd be a strong argument for drawing the line at AIDS. There are many other difficulties that would justify it, you see. And then, of course, once that happens, then the teaching is itself undone. And let me just run with this for a moment. That also has its consequences. The society that we live in, of course, has long since founded itself on a rejection of Humanae Vitae. You know, if you get the American people to salute the flag, they will no longer say, well, you know, I pledge allegiance to the flag. They'll say, I pledge allegiance to Planned Parenthood and to available contraception for everyone at all times. And people, people base life on this, you know. And that has led, what are the fruits of that? What are the fruits of the universal acceptance of and reliance on contraception as a way of life? Well, the effect of that has been, it's taken a long time, but the effect of that has been the inability to see that marriage and children, or sex and children, have anything to do with each other, which has led to the inability to find a reason to limit marriage to people of the opposite sex. You see, this is where it goes. This is a seed that looks very small when you plant it, and then it grows and grows and grows, and its final fruition we're seeing in our own culture, you know. So this is tough. This is nasty business. This is tough. If you go one way and accept contraception as a legitimate moral practice, you get the United States of America, which is what you see. If you're pleased with this present sexual climate, you're pleased with the natural fruit of contraception. On the other hand, if you go the other way, it's suffering, it's loss, it's the cross, but in faith, it's the path that leads to life. That's what I think you have to aim at, despite the terrible price. Yes?
If you're working at Target or Giant, retail, and somebody puts down some condoms in front of you, are you obliged to scan them through the cash register, or is that to reload?
I think that you can, my own instinctive judgment is that you can, if you can find another job, you should. That doesn't involve, ideally you'd find a job that doesn't involve cooperation like that. But that's ideally. I think that people are responsible for their own moral choices and what they buy. And I think that, I think that you are responsible for your own moral choices and your purchases. I think that if you empowered cashiers to refuse to sell you something, where does that principle end? I mean, if someone comes up, they're overweight, they come up with